Hello, I really want to welcome you to this channel. My name is Dana Mia Cohen, and I talk about worldview, conscious living, and shifting to a new earth. Today I want to focus on extreme ideologies, and in particular the Nazi ideology and that regime from the past. And I want to do this so that we can hopefully learn from history. I feel like many things of the past are repeating in the present in a very, very unexpected and quite extreme way. I think it's really important to look at this. So I'm going to bring forward information about the old Nazi ideology and that fascist regime. This is very important since elements of this are resurfacing today. Regarding the accusations in the past and Nazi propaganda against the Jews in pre-war Europe. So the Nazis accused the Jews with a blood libel. It was a false accusation, and they themselves, so the Nazis themselves, spilled so much blood, and they murdered not only Jews but many other populations. They spilled the blood altogether of millions of people, and they didn't stop doing this until they were forced to stop by other armies. So it was the US, the British, and the Allied forces together that stopped them from progressing their horrible regime. The Nazis then also accused the Jews of controlling and owning all the money. This was part of their propaganda, and it was used to rile up hatred. Yet at the same time, they themselves invaded other countries, and they stole the money and resources of many, many people from different countries. The Nazis then also accused the Jews, as part of their propaganda, of plotting to take over the world. And they themselves were the ones that actually planned to do this. They actually followed through on that plan, and they did it by invading multiple countries. They literally went for and had the objective of world domination. Everything that they accused, everything the Nazis accused the Jews of doing, they were actually doing themselves. This is very interesting. They systematically used propaganda to dehumanize Jewish people and other populations as well, including gays and homosexuals. They portrayed these people as subhuman or dangerous or responsible for all kinds of issues like Germany's social and economic problems. It's obvious that this was impossible. All these different minority groups were in no way responsible for these wider issues in the society and the culture. They were only a small minority and were generally peaceful and law-abiding people. And when it came to the Jews, they were integrated also into German and European culture. History attests to this fact. Through newspapers, posters, films, and radio broadcasts, they spread horrible propaganda. The Nazis spread vicious lies about the Jews, portraying them as scheming, greedy, and a threat to the so-called Aryan race. This relentless messaging created a climate of fear and hatred, allowing the Nazis to scapegoat the Jews for Germany's defeat during World War I and its economic troubles as well, by convincing ordinary people, the population, that the Jews were an enemy from within. The Nazis justified ever harsher measures, of course discrimination, culminating in the Holocaust and in the death of 6 million Jews, as well as the death of many other groups, minority groups. This was a true genocide. Regarding the blood libel, they revived actually a medieval libel myth which falsely accused the Jews of murdering Christian children to use their blood in religious rituals. This, of course, is complete nonsense. Through the centuries, this baseless lie was then recycled by Nazi propaganda to paint the Jews as monstrous, cruel, and it fueled public hatred and fear. They then perpetrated the next lie and another lie, which is regarding Jews controlling the money of the world. The Nazis spread this false claim that Jews secretly controlled the global finances and the banking system, manipulating economies to exploit and oppress non-Jewish people. These lies fed into deep-seated anti-Semitic stereotypes and helped the Nazis to then persecute and eventually genocide the Jewish people. It becomes very clear that the Nazis and that regime were hell-bent on world domination. They certainly spilled blood as they invaded multiple countries, and they killed many people in their death camps that they created. They also definitely took over the resources and the monies of the countries they invaded. Everything that they falsely accused the minority groups, and particularly the Jewish population, was exactly the thing that they were doing themselves. The false accusations were extremely egregious. These were dangerous lies. And the thing is, this same propaganda is resurfacing now in 2025. This is shocking. Yes, now in 2025, this old propaganda, this Nazi propaganda, is being recycled and it's resurfacing in the here and now. Now look at how this works. This is fascism in action. It is radical extremism in action. And it's so glaringly obvious and transparent. And yes, it's happening again today, with radical and fascist ideologies that are targeting the Jews yet again. I would call this extreme societal narcissism. They project and accuse others. So any radical regimes, extremists, they accuse and project their own crimes and their wrongdoings onto the scapegoats that they choose, usually a minority group, and they accuse those people of exactly the thing they're doing. Again, this is how narcissists operate. They find scapegoats to blame for their own motives and actions, and it's as simple as that. Scapegoating works by projecting a society or a culture's own failures, issues, problems, insecurities, and flaws onto a targeted minority group, allowing the majority to preserve a positive or grandiose self-image. Now, every society has problems, but currently in our cultures, in this current situation, in 2025, there are clearly many problems in the world. And so, again, this age-old societal narcissism and scapegoating is being used rather than accepting responsibility for mistakes, for issues, for hardships. A society collectively blames a marginalized group, branding them as a cause of all the problems. Of course, this is delusional. It will not solve the problems. It will certainly make things worse, but it certainly won't solve the problems. So this projection deflects guilt and shame away from the majority, reinforcing a fantasy, and it is a fantasy, of moral or racial or other superiority. In the case of Nazi Germany, they considered themselves racially superior. But in today's time, in 2025, it's all about moral superiority. Same toxic issues, same toxic problem. In Nazi Germany, for example, blaming the Jews of for Germany's defeat and economic troubles allowed the people, the population, to see themselves as blameless victims, preserving their collective pride whilst justifying horrific violence. This extreme projection is happening now again, with a rise in anti-Semitism or anti-Jew sentiment. This is a symptom of a very, very sick culture. And now we see the resurfacing of all kinds of radical ideologies, all kinds of extremism, extreme far left groups, extreme religious groups with these types of fascist tendencies. And they are again scapegoating people, and particularly scapegoating Jews, for broader societal problems, using collective blame to absolve themselves of failure and preserve, again, this self-aggrandizing worldview. So we have the radicals and extremists doing the very same things that the Nazis did. And apparently humans don't learn from history. The same lies, the same propaganda, just packaged differently for 2025. And people just seem to be following it blindly. Apparently humans don't learn from history. This is very, very alarming. And I would say maybe it's time to change this, to switch it up, to change the playbook for something better, something different. We see the same old propaganda, myths about Jews controlling the world, conspiring to harm society and wielding secret power. Never mind the fact that many Jews are not doing so well. There is poverty in the Jewish population, there's poverty in Israel, certainly. And this whole trend is extremely dangerous because it taps into centuries of hateful stereotypes that can quickly mobilize violence. And I think this is the goal of the extremists, the radicals. Today, the radicals are repackaging these lies for modern audiences by linking them to current conflicts like the Israel-Palestine conflict or global economic instability. They frame Jews as global manipulators, recasting again these old conspiracy theories in language that resonates with contemporary fears about globalization, media influence, or political corruption. By blaming Jews for complex world events, the extremists, avoid accountability and rally followers around a false sense of victimhood, laying the groundwork for further discrimination and even violence. This is just Nazi propaganda recycled all over again. The crazy thing is that people seem to be swallowing this. If people keep drinking the Kool-Aid and keep following the death cults, and they are death cults, the result of swallowing poison in the end is also self-damaging. Not only does it incite violence and hatred towards others, but it also, swallowing poison is definitely toxic to oneself as well. It also damages the culture. If you're inclined to support and align yourself with death cults, with radicals and extremists that call for destruction, they call for death and destruction, sprinkled with nihilism and nihilistic tendencies, one can only really, I feel sorry for you, because this is pure hatred and it's poison and it's completely baseless. In the end, it's destructive to self, as much as it is to others. Also, if this is going to continue, it infects the wider culture. And this is again a sign of a very sick and corrupt culture. I have to say this goes well beyond anti-Semitism and anti-Jews. In the end, the Nazis killed other groups and they invaded other countries, killing, destroying and taking over as they paved this horrendous path. It's also a takeover of other cultures and other peoples, other ways of being, and a way of life that wasn't their own. So again, this fascism, it infiltrates, it's a takeover mentality. They killed many soldiers, many citizens, they killed Europeans, they destroyed everything and everyone that blocked their path. This is the same again, this same thing recycles again with the radicals, the extremists and the death cults. Their objective is nothing less than domination, world domination. The Nazis made no secret of this, and neither do the radicals and fascists of today. When people tell you who they are, believe them. When they admit to rape, murder, when they themselves say that they've done this, when they admit to rape, to murder, and they are proud of this, believe them. The time has come to learn from history and to stop swallowing the Kool-Aid and stop spreading the poison. Stop aligning with repackaged, radical death cults and fascist ideologies, and stop supporting these people and these groups. Because when you do this, you are supporting death and destruction, including your own. Thank you for listening. Please join again. I look forward to seeing you here again.